Before we get into the nitty-gritty of optimizing your site speed, I'm going to briefly take you through the theory behind why some pages are faster than others and what actually occurs when a site is loading. That's because once you know this, you'll understand why I'm taking you through various exercises and what you're actually doing to help your pages interact with browsers. So, when a web page is loading, what is actually happening? In really basic terms to begin with, there are 4 steps of the page load process. The first is the request being made when the link is clicked. Then, the page and the files that constitute it are downloaded before the web browser uses the page resources to build the page. Finally, the page is then rendered and the user can begin interacting with it. The 4 steps are referred to as the request, response, build, and render. But don't be fooled into thinking that these steps occur once and a page is built. Each step is performed several times before a page is loaded. Let's go into these in a bit more depth and break down exactly what happens in each of these stages, starting with the request. A request begins when a link is clicked, a page is refreshed, or a URL is directly typed into a search bar and navigated to. When a link is clicked, the appropriate document, which is the web page text file located on a web server, is requested by the browser over a system called HTTP. This is essentially how search engines talk to each other and send files over the internet from servers to browsers. The response then begins, and the web server provides the HTML file to the browser. If you had a page that was made of one single HTML text file, that would be the end of the response step. However, 99% of pages on the internet also include CSS, or styling files, JavaScript, and more. So the request and response stages take a few cycles. These other files, CSS, JavaScript, images, are known as resources. When a browser reads or parses a text file, it discovers resources within it and requests them. When a browser parses an HTML file and requests different resources within it to build them, it follows what is known as the critical rendering path, which we will cover in a little more depth later on. Once the browser has the resources, it can begin building the page. So, third step, here we go. The way the browser goes about building the page is by combining what it finds in the document, the original HTML file, and the information in the resources. It does this in a further 3 steps. It starts by building the DOM, the document object model, the CSSOM, CSS object model, and then the render tree. The DOM is basically a map of where the HTML text says things are displayed on a page. By building this, it is a little like building the template for where content will go. The CSSOM is a map of where different styles should be applied, and the render tree combines the two to create the full map of how the entire page will be laid out and displayed to the user. Okay, so the browser has requested all the information it needs, built it into a map, and now the browser can start painting this map onto the screen. As you can see, there's a lot that goes into loading a page. So next time you get impatient at a 3-second loading time, maybe you'll spare a thought for your poor multitasking browser, desperately passing information and painting trees. So this is essentially how a site is loaded. But what is slowing it down? Well, if you've been paying attention, you've probably got a pretty good idea. The browser has to parse and fetch every single resource you have in your HTML text. Starting really basically, if you have a ridiculously long HTML file, the browser is going to take longer to read it and request the resources and files within it. If you have huge amounts of media, JavaScript files, Flash files, images, CSS files, it's going to take considerably longer for the browser to fetch, build, and paint them. To put this into perspective, let's imagine you have an unbelievably simple page. In the HTML, there is one CSS file, one JavaScript file, and one image. Let's look at the critical rendering path a browser has to take in this example. It starts by downloading the HTML text, reading it, and seeing that there is one image, one CSS file, and one JavaScript file. So it begins to download the image. Then the browser realizes it cannot display the web page without first getting the CSS and JavaScript. So it downloads the CSS file and reads that. However, as fast as they are, unlike everyone's mother, browsers can only do one thing at a time. So once it downloads the CSS file, it realizes it still can't display the web page until it has the JavaScript file. It then downloads the JavaScript file and reads that to ensure there isn't anything else it needs to request. This is the render path for a really simple web page. How many different elements of styling, media, or anything that makes your site look stunningly beautiful do you think you have on your page? Now, imagine how complex and clunky the critical rendering path for your site is. JavaScript and CSS files are particularly problematic, as they are known as render blocking files, because it doesn't matter how many you have on your page, a browser must download and pass each and every one of them before it can show anything to the user. You may even have several CSS files within just one CSS file, which means the poor old browser is desperately racing back and forth to the server like the days you reluctantly had to do the bleep test in PE before it can even really get going on its rendering. So, your critical rendering path is key. These are the files that will leave users staring at a screen whiter than a blizzard in Antarctica, because behind the scenes, your browser is giving itself a fiber optic heart attack trying to fetch all your resources. Don't worry though, this doesn't mean you need to turn your site into a blank canvas of HTML on white to have a fast page. There are ways of still making your pages fast and pleasant to use without having to compromise the overall quality. And these are what we're going to cover in our next lessons. We're going to get started on actually reducing your site speed now. And we're going to start by finding some of the biggest culprits. Large images that take too long to download. If there are any images that are larger than they need to be on your site, we're going to find them and we are going to compress them. We'll start with a sneaky way of smoking out all of those oversized images lurking somewhere on your site. Go to Google Images and in the search bar type site, then your domain. So for example, I'm going to type site, adversent.com. Oh my gosh, look what happens. You get all your website images displayed in a nice, neat list. Now, we're going to filter your images by $1,000 if you guess. Nope, size. Go to Tools, click it, then hover over Larger Than. We're going to start nice and conservatively and filter for anything larger than 640 by 480. Have a hover over some of the images and have a look at who needs to trim down on the waistline a bit. This one catches my eye, being a hefty 7,360 by 4,912 pixels. So the next thing to do is identify it on your site and reduce it. In doing so, reducing your load time, your site speed, and your number of impatient users. However, you can also simply use the Google Insights tool, which you access just by typing in Page Speed Insights and clicking the link at the top that says Page Speed Insights, Google Developer. Then, put your URL of choice into the bar and analyze away. Think of something fun while it analyzes and loads. Then, have a look under Opportunities and have a look at the Properly Sized Images tab and expand your options. Here you have a list of all your images that can be resized to improve your site speed, as having any images larger than the versions that are actually rendered on the user's screen, as otherwise you're simply wasting time. So, as with our other method, identify some of the biggest offenders in your list of images, where you can see you can achieve a really good reduction in size. When you find the image you want to resize, download a copy of it. If you've used Shutterstock or some other stock photo platform to source your images, this is really easy. And we're going to reduce that copy using some free tools. So, go to Google and type in resize image online. Go to resizeimage.net. This is a really useful free tool that can help you easily compress your images. All you have to do after is upload your newly documented copy of the image. Then, once it has uploaded, you can resize it. We'll do 50% for now. You can already see that the image is now a lot smaller and will load a lot faster on the page. And if I view the image now, you can still see that the quality is good and that it's still pretty big. So, you can resize and reduce at your own discretion. You can even go to the Optimize Your Image section and click Progressive Compression. Then use the slider to reduce your image quality a little, and then click Compress. Again, immediate results. So, then just download your new smaller, sleeker, faster loading image, and tell the pages that use this image to refer to this file instead of the original one. This is a really easy step you can take to reduce the time it takes for your pages to load. These easy fixes are known as low-hanging fruit. Just go through your images and pick out your worst offenders, and where possible, cut them down and reduce load speed time. Remember to save your original images under a different name and keep hold of them, because if it turns out that the image quality is too poor and compromises the user experience, or you have any issues using the new file, you always have the original that you can continue to use while you address these issues. Always remember though, don't turn your site into a blur of pixels and poor looking photos. You never want to compromise the customer experience. Have a little play around. Experiment with your image sizes and quality, and test them to see if they still look good on your site. The fact is, you can realistically reduce images quite a lot without ruining the quality of them. And it's a really effective way to quickly bring the load time of your pages down, helping people navigate through your site more smoothly, increase engagement, and boost you up those SEO rankings.